All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're in Hawaii, but we've got people from all over the West Coast and the East Coast today. And this is our Honolulu nonprofit Salesforce user group. That's a mouthful. I was wishing that there was a shorter name for our group, but we're focusing on nonprofits. And actually, Johnny and I are in an NPSP masterclass together with Sarah Epting. And so we are focusing on NPSP, learning that. Oh, and then Chinmayi is from India at midnight. Oh my goodness. Wow. Thank you so much. This is really cool that you're joining us so late. And then today we're going to be looking at some of the new things that are happening in the nonprofit Success Pack. And we're joined by Dodi Friedenberg. And Dodi, I would love if you could just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your background, what you've been doing in this space and in the ecosystem. You're like an MVP in my eyes. Like you're always so gracious with all the helping people and mentoring people. So give us a little bit of story about your background and what you're up to.
Sure, thanks for asking. Well, let's see. I got a BA in psych and went to social work school, but fell in love with software. I was a volunteer coordinator and somebody offered to make a database for me and I was hooked way back in the, early 90s. And then I worked in software a little bit. I did tech support, documentation and training. And then I stepped away to raise my kids for a very long gap. And when I looked back up from that and asked nonprofits how they were managing their data, everyone said Salesforce, and everyone said they were struggling with Salesforce. And the tower was just being built in San Francisco, and I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was accepted into a 3-month intensive training program, which I attended. And ever since then, that was late 2017, I have been kind of just hung out a shingle and have been hiring myself out as a consultant. I like to think of myself as an admin for hire to nonprofits that don't have the on-staff admin support that they need. So I've been able to support a few different nonprofits in the last few years. And along the way, I picked up 6 certifications, a few super badges. I'm 2 times Ranger, working my way up to that 3X. And I've also taught Salesforce admin skills. I've taught the NPSP. I've developed a project on the NPSP so that people can try to sort of do their own implementation of NPSP with some direction, but not too much hand-holding. And I mentor people who are entering the ecosystem or wanting to work with nonprofits. So job search, help, and just generally looking to increase my network of, I help you, you help me, whether it's job search or Salesforce admin projects. And to segue into our topic, I find it's challenging to keep up with what keeps coming, what's new in Salesforce, both for general admin topics and with the NPSP. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to spend some time thinking about that and share what I've come up with you today.
That's awesome. Thanks, Dodi. And I just wanted to say that I got to meet Dodi. I think we met at some user group and then I reached out to you and then we just started talking and we've been in a couple of study groups together. Actually, Dodi and I were in the BA certification study group together, actually that she started and I joined. And she passed hers already and I'm going to be taking mine at the end of the month. So hopefully I'll pass too. And so Dodi is an awesome person in the ecosystem. So very generous with her time, I've found. So I'm really excited that you're here to talk to us about some of the new things that are going on. And I just gave you co-host capabilities, so if you have any slides you want to share with us.
I put the link to the deck in the chat so everybody can get into it, and I'll also share my screen and show it.
Cool.
And that's because I put a lot of links in the deck. So rather than having to put the links in the chat, you'll all just be able to click right to them from the
Oh, cool.
deck.
Okay. That's great.
Let's see. So I subtitled this talk, "When did that happen?" And I don't know about all of you, but I have found that keeping up with everything that's constantly changing in Salesforce and in NPSP can be challenging.
Mhm.
I hope that our talk today can be kind of a conversation as people have ideas or know other things that they want to add or have had experiences with the specific things we'll talk about. Let's have it be interactive. So here are some of the resources that I have used and found for this topic. First of all, the release notes for NPSP are on GitHub. I've been looking through it and pulling stuff in for our discussion today. It's not the most user-friendly way to find out what's going on, I don't think. I did notice that they have all these beta releases with notes about things so that a lot of times it kind of repeats. The new feature repeats with every beta release and then finally with the full release. So going through like this and finding, the changes that were made was a lot of scrolling, but I guess once you're caught up and you're just looking at the most recent release, maybe it's not so bad. So there is, we used to have the Power of Us Hub, and that kind of got shut down and moved to the Trailblazer community. There's the Salesforce.org hub, which is a broadcast only group in the Trailblazer community. And that is, I think, our main source of news about NPSP releases. So going ahead and becoming a member of that group and subscribing to their weekly or daily digests or posts can be a good source of giving you updates on what's going on from .org itself. And then there's a hashtag that you can follow in the Trailblazer community that is NPSP release. I found this release feature matrix that somebody, I think from .org made for the winter 23 release. I didn't really have much of a chance to look at it. And then of course, Terry Cole, if you don't know him, he's a real MVP in the Salesforce ecosystem. And he usually puts out what he calls his candy, the top candy for each release. He doesn't focus it just on NPSP features. I think he focuses it on like main Salesforce new features that would be of interest to Power of 10 license holders, as he puts it, or eligible nonprofits. And what I've done for the last 2 releases is kind of tagged on to his candy and put a summary of the NPSP specific new features that I kind of read through the release notes and pulled out the most interesting or the most exciting, the most actionable things. And I'm not aware of anybody else. Jen Lee used to do a blog post every release where she summarized, and I know she read all of the release notes cover to cover. Then she became an admin evangelist, went to work for Salesforce, and I don't remember if she still puts out that blog at release time. And I'm not aware of anyone who does it for NPSP. Is anybody else here aware of other good resources besides these?
No, I haven't heard of anything. As a matter of fact, I'm really glad you put this list together because oftentimes it's overwhelming to know where to go, to get the information.
Yeah, of course, Salesforce Ben is a great blog to follow,
Okay.
and they're always posting about new things that are coming out. And yeah, somebody, Jana, or is it Jana, posted about the,
It's Jana.
Jana, hi, nice to meet you.
You too. And I think Ryan Ozimek does a blog where he's sort of talks about the releases coming up. I don't know how deep he goes, but yeah, anyway. Oh, the pub crawl newsletter.
Yeah. Yeah, his pub crawl newsletter is, he kind of gives you the link to discussions in the hub, and then you have to go there to read the thread. And yeah, so that would be, and I used to see it every week or every month religiously, and now I only see it every now and then. So I don't know if I'm missing it or if he's putting it out less frequently. Does anybody know?
He does it every Monday, but I've noticed that it does end up in my junk mail a lot. So maybe it's just getting buried.
All right, fantastic. Well, another change that happened was that the .org used to do a new release every 2 weeks. And I think it was around 2021 that they went to going with the 3 major releases. They do have patch releases in between if there's a bug that needs to be fixed. But I think now, and that feels a little more doable to me to know that 3 times a year I need to go look and see what's new, instead of every 2 weeks having to look and find out that there's nothing major, it's just a bug fix. Oh, now there's something major. So maybe things are looking up for all of us to keep up. All right, so if there aren't any other general comments, let's see, Deb posted about Cloud for Good. Let's see what she shared with us. Oh,
I just
okay.
noticed that's winter 22. I don't know if
Oh,
there's an
yeah.
equivalent that's winter 23. I'm guessing there is. They
Yeah,
have a
they're
Trailblazer community too. So there's probably
good.
something there.
And probably you can subscribe to this newsletter.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that as well. Great, thank you.
Sure.
So on page 5, I started to list out some of the changes. And what I tried to do for today is focus not on other nonprofit cloud products like Elevate, although there were a number of things for an experience cloud that jumped out at me. So I put those on their own slide. And then, things started to kind of get organized by topic. And I thought, well, let me organize them by topic as well. That way, if you don't use that feature, then you probably don't need to worry about what's new with that feature. So this page is for some sort of general non-specific items that I found recently. So this very first one, I really haven't had a chance to explore myself. It's refunds. Users can now process full refunds in NPSP, and there's a link to it. So I don't have much to say about that one, but since it is the most recent thing I found and I'm going in reverse order, I thought I'd just mention that. And then moving on to this all members deceased checkbox. That was introduced recently in summer 22, and this is an example of a new field that you won't see unless all of these things, if you're implementing a new org going forward, you would probably see all these things already enabled by default. But if you're going to work in an already established nonprofit that's been using Salesforce for a while, then these things often tend to get slipped in with the release, but not enabled. So that's sort of the focus of my talk today, is what are some of these things, that this capability that are given to us, but if we don't know about it and we don't enable it, then we might not be taking advantage of it. So that's the case with this all members deceased checkbox. And the idea would be that if you've been marking people in the household as deceased, when the last person in the household is deceased, then I've got the instructions here. So this tells you how to do it. And you would need to change field level security and add it to the page layout for anybody to see it. And then what happens? I assume then you just need to filter on that checkbox if you want to not include those folks in a mailing, for example. And then back in November 2021, there were two other kind of related fields added. One was for an undeliverable address was added to accounts, contacts, and addresses, and a bad address checkbox on the address record. I wonder if that's two different things or one thing. I'm not sure. If anybody wants to fire up their org and take a look and see if they see these things or not, that could be useful. I'm not really prepared to show in an org, and we can certainly, I can stop sharing and someone else can share if they want to demonstrate any of these things. So moving on to gift entry and NPSP data import, and those are kind of interconnected because a lot of it uses the same advanced mapping. So I kind of included it all on one page. And there's kind of a lot here, and we won't talk about all of it. The main one that I was excited about is the ability to add soft credit to an opportunity via gift entry. And if everyone doesn't know, does everyone know what gift entry, what we mean by gift entry, or shall I review a little bit? Why don't you put a 1 in the chat if you're super familiar with gift entry, and a 2 if you would like me to review it.
I think it'd be nice to review, even though we
Alright.
know it, but are you talking about the gift entry template, right? In NPSP settings?
Yeah, it's really an unfortunate name, gift entry, because if you just go to an opportunity and create a gift, isn't that gift entry? But what and the feature used to be called batch gift entry, which is a little makes it clearer.
Right.
But that's, you know, and I have down here that the legacy batch gift entry functionality was officially retired back in June of 2021.
Oh.
But you can still see the tab and you can view and report on those batches, but you can't create any new ones in the old legacy batch gift entry. And the new and improved version of that is just called gift entry. They got rid of the word batch, partly because that's the name of the legacy tool, but also because you can actually do single donation entries through gift entry.
But it still it's still though batches. If you will have multiple entries, you still have to do, you enter them in a batch and then you upload them, right? Is that functionality still the same?
Yes, yes, that's the idea. You kind of like, you can set up templates for the entry. You can set up default values to make entry quicker. Like if you're doing a pile of checks, you could set them all to check. You could set the date to today. Well, I guess you want to set the check for the specific check. But anyway, any common values you can set and then go ahead and do your entry, and it kind of holds them in a temporary holding place. And then you upload them, and that's when the opportunities actually get created. So that's gift entry. And I am not sure when that new gift entry version was first introduced. I want to say probably in 2018 or 19, if anybody wants to look it up and see. But when it was first introduced, you could not enter soft credits. So you'd have to do all your donations, upload them all, and then go to those gifts and add in any contact roles that are needed to give soft credit. Does anybody need me to review what we mean by contact roles or soft credit? put a 2 in the chat if you would like me to go over any of that. Cool. So entering soft credit through gift entry is now available. And let's see if there's anything else here. They've done some things to try to make the interface of the NPSP data import process easier to follow by changing around some buttons and things like that. You can also do tribute fields in gift entry since spring of 22. So moving on to recurring donors, that seems, you know, these two, gift entry, NPSP import, and recurring donors seem to be the topics that have been getting the most attention lately from what I've been gathering. So for example, they added recurring donations to gift entry. They added these sustainer fields that tell you if someone is an active, lapsed, or former recurring donor. And you won't see those unless you put them on the page layout and make them available to your users. They added this change log that keeps track of what has happened to the recurring donation. The end date field, they changed the help text, but they didn't change it on existing orgs. So they're telling us that we should manually go in and change the help text on the end date of recurring donations to this text. Let's see what else we have here. The number of days from next donation date setting. Now it supports yearly installments. So I guess it previously was assuming monthly donations, and now it's also supporting yearly donations. And then it was added to the data import and advanced mapping back in June 2021. So here's more detail on those sustainer fields. If you wanted to add those to your page layout, I included the instructions right here on slide 9. Here's a couple of changes that were made to Experience Cloud. If you have an Experience Cloud, you now have the ability to add recurring donations into the portal, and also to display the donor's hard credit giving history in the portal. Oh, this should have been before Experience Cloud, I think. This was the instructions for the tribute gift fields in gift entry and NPSP data importer. Okay, this is one that kind of excites me, and I hope we might have a little bit of discussion about. As we all hopefully know, when you install NPSP, you get buttons on the contact page and on the account page that say things like new donation, new grant, new in-kind gift. And the best practice is to start from the contact or the organization account and start entering those opportunities through those buttons. And up until recently, summer 21, the new button on the opportunity tab couldn't be removed. And I think that the intuitive thing that people are going to do is go to the opportunity tab and click new to create a new opportunity. And I only found out recently that starting in summer of 21, we actually can remove the new button from the opportunity tab. And the question I have is there any reason not to remove it? Is anyone aware of a situation where we should allow users to start a new opportunity from the opportunity tab instead of forcing them to go from a contact or account? Any thoughts? Does everybody follow what I'm talking about? All right. So apparently this ability has been around for a little while in Classic under search layouts for Salesforce Classic. And now, and I'm not sure when this appeared, if you go in the object manager and look at an object down the left-hand side where you have, fields, page layouts, record types, all that stuff, there's a new item called List View Button Layout. And that's where you can remove the new button. They made it really, really easy.
I have that on my org.
Interesting.
And I'm in my, like a real production org. Are other people seeing that? I'm not seeing it. Unless I'm missing something. You're saying you go into your object manager and
Mhm.
choose the list.
Choose an object.
Oh, okay, hold on. Yeah.
And down the left-hand side, about halfway down, do you see list view buttons?
Oh, list view button layout. Okay. Oh. I would have completely missed that.
And
Yeah.
that's not an NPSP thing, that's a Salesforce thing. So,
Cool.
yeah. Well, if you have further thoughts in the future, please reach out to me over LinkedIn or however. I'm very interested in this question of taking away the new button on the Opportunity tab. Now, this is also not an NPSP thing. This is a standard Salesforce thing, but I think it can be very relevant for nonprofits, the idea of using dynamic forms. And the history here is, Salesforce Ben said it was the #1 asked for feature, 13 years in the making, so many votes on 30 merged ideas to be able to have dynamic forms. And starting in 2020, we could do it for custom objects. And only now, starting in winter 23, we can do it on certain standard objects, including accounts, contacts, person accounts, and opportunities. So that's huge. If you have unwieldy pages, you can now really think about redesigning the pages using dynamic forms. And you can even think about reducing record types or getting rid of record types and just controlling what people see based on dynamic, these dynamic forms. Now that is a thing. What is the point of record type? Contact. Move, delete to. Oh, yes. Clay, do you want to say more about your question? Oh, record types on contacts. Mhm.
Yeah, now that we're able to do this, can anybody come up? Are there still like legitimate use cases for record typing contact?
Well, contacts doesn't have record types by default, so as far as I know. So if you have them, somebody introduced them there. And I think that the answer on any object is, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you need different stages, then I think you still need different record types. And if you need different pick list values on other fields, you would still need record types. But if the only reason you have record types is to have different page layouts, then I think the answer is we probably don't need record types anymore if you can get your dynamic page doing what you need it to do for your users. And leads are on the roadmap for spring 23 and cases for summer 23. And at Dreamforce 22, Salesforce announced the intention to support this for all objects by September 23, but safe harbor, we'll see what happens. I did want to talk about the Manage Household button, and I thought I was going to find that it was in a recent release, but apparently this has been around since Classic days. But I think what happened is when people switched from Classic to Lightning, the button didn't necessarily show up. So, and if they weren't using it in Classic and it didn't show up in Lightning, then they wouldn't know to look for it. So if you do go to work for a nonprofit and they're using Salesforce, make sure they have the Manage Household button showing up on their household account page. That's a super powerful feature that lets us do all kinds of things with households. Let me see if I can get something going here so that I can demonstrate. I don't seem to have an NPSP org linked anymore. Not one that I can clearly identify as an NPSP org. But if anybody has theirs up and wants to share their screen and show how the Manage Household button works, we can switch. Is everyone familiar with Manage Household? No? Does anybody want to show their screen? Let's see. Wise Hawk says it's NPSP. Okay, so I'm on a household account and here's the Manage Household button. Takes a minute to come up, kind of like the NPSP settings does. Hopefully it will come up. Okay, so we have here these little cards that represent the contacts that are in this household. We can drag and drop them to change the order, which automatically, I believe, changes the household name, the formal greeting, and the informal greeting. So right now we've got Sokolov and Bates. If I rearrange this order, then it just switched to Bates and Sokolov. Here we can undo the auto populating of these fields and override them and not have them change. I don't recommend that to people because if they ever want to do a mass change, then they'd have to go in and go make a manual change to all the ones they marked to not auto change. But if, you know, for a few rare instances it's important, then they certainly can. And they can specify which of the contacts is the primary contact. And I can also put the phone and an account description in here. And then this is the best way. If you find that there are multiple household accounts for the same household and you want to bring them together, or someone is in the wrong household, you search for them here. I don't know who's in this org that I can search for, but let's see. ANSA Primov. Let's say we find out that ANSA Primov really lives here. Now look, it shows you the address that is on ANSA's contact record before you do anything, just on a search. And certainly if the addresses are the same, then you can feel confident that this person belongs in this household. But I I want to caution you that as soon as you hit this plus sign to move the person into this household, the card that appears over here for that person is going to have the address from the household. So if you're not sure, or if you want to examine the address, look at it before you hit the plus sign, not after you hit the plus sign. And then once you hit the plus sign, you still have to hit save. So if you cancel out, then it wouldn't, all the changes would be reversed. And hopefully everybody knows that this is if Ansa Primov is in an account by herself and I bring her in this way, then the NPSP automation will know to delete her household because there's nobody in it. But if you just go to her house, if you just go to her record and delete her, and she was the last contact in the household, does everybody know what happens? Anybody? If you delete the last contact out of a household in an NPSP org, it's in effect a household of 0 people now. So what the NPSP automation does is it renames the household to anonymous household. So if you look in your production org, in anybody's production org, and search for anonymous household, chances are you will find some, because people don't know this and they just delete contacts and leave these empty households lying around. This is the right way to pull a contact out of their household and into this household. Yes, that's something that I tend to put on my wall of zeros or clean data dashboard, or some people call it a wall of shame. And hopefully it has none. And when they pop up, somebody can go pay attention to them. Now, somehow, sometimes they actually have donations still attached to them. And that's a real problem, because we want that 360-degree view of our donors. And if somebody's donations are half on one account and half on another, that's not good. And maybe they didn't get an acknowledgement for that donation. So the ones with money attached to them really need attention. The ones that have no related records and are just, especially if it has no primary contact listed, there's not much you can do, and you can probably just delete them. But if it has a primary contact listed, then you know who it used to be. So you could merge them or you could delete them. I don't know if anybody has thoughts about that at that point. So that's the Manage Household button. And customizable roll-ups were introduced in 2018. Again, this is kind of ancient news. If you're, starting new with a new NPSP org, it will have customizable rollups enabled by default. And perhaps most orgs have already upgraded to customizable rollups by now. I will tell you that when it first came out, I was a little nervous about enabling it in an existing org that had all the standard NPSP rollups. And it said that it was going to convert any of our, I forget what the term was, it was something like user-defined rollups. So I thought, oh my goodness, I better make sure it's gonna. So I did this whole study in a sandbox of I did a conversion and then I compared the fields to make sure that it was working properly. And I did find that there were some slight differences in rounding, or like in date fields, when it says the last donation or the first donation, one was a little more specific than the other. So the date field might give you a slightly different result. But in general, it worked just fine and I didn't need to worry. So don't hesitate to enable customizable rollups. We find it here in NPSP settings under donations. It's the last item there. And so if you're in an older org where it hasn't been enabled yet, you'll see this flipped off. And you just flip this toggle and it turns it on, and you can turn it back off. So it's not an irreversible action. And then once it's enabled, you can go in here and configure the customizable rollups. And this is a very user-friendly interface where you have two things going on. You have rollups and you have filter groups. So you can create a filter group, set all your filters, and then you can use that for multiple rollups. And there are all of these standard rollups that come out of the box that tells you first the object and then the field. And so we have them for accounts, contacts, GAUs, and recurring donations. And of course, the GAU allocation rolls up to GAU, and all the other ones are rolling up from opportunity. So it's not for all objects or anything. It's really just for these two objects, opportunities and GAU allocations, if you're using them. But this is very powerful. You can modify the existing ones. You can create new ones if you need them since 2018. And this one we already talked about. I didn't have anything to add to that. This is really beyond the scope of NPSP, and I don't know much about it, but since it's very recent, this data lake for nonprofits was just introduced in this most recent release. So if anybody has interest in that, you're welcome to take a look at that. And that's pretty much what I had for us for today.
This data lake thing is really interesting. I was not aware of this. I was just working on a very large nonprofit project, and they had tons of data that they were moving over to Power BI environment so that they could have all their data dump into one place and then be able to pull out their analytics. And it sounds like this might be something similar. I don't know. I have to look into that. Oh, it coordinates with Tableau also. Has anybody else heard of this or know anything about it? No? Interesting.
Does anybody have any thoughts about releases, keeping up with new features, any practices that you have that you want to share? Anybody feeling more inspired to keep up?
So, is your practice then when these new releases come out, then you go through that list that you gave us at the very beginning? It would be great if there could be just one place, just to get all the information and be able to work through it. But it looks like you have to go to several different places, or what's your thoughts? What are your thoughts on that?
When it comes to the NPSP release, I think the first one is probably your best place to go. It's not like 600 pages like the Salesforce release. It's usually just a bulleted list of maybe only 3, but maybe 20 items. So you can and they have links so you can get more information. And if they are really only doing it 3 times a year, that feels very doable. I hope to continue to do a summary every time. So I'm sending that out to my clients and my former clients. It's a way for me to stay in touch with my former clients and stay on their radar and be of service to them. And I share it with other consultants so they can share it with their clients, just to give people a shortcut right in their email box instead of them having to go to GitHub to read it. And I kind of cut down the fluff and just give the short and to the point version. And I think that's what all these other things are too. There are other sources of or other presentations or other people's opinions about the release. So you don't have to go to these other things. They're just resources.
Oh, Clay's adding some links in here. Who's the YouTube?
One thing
Adam Foyston. What do you like about him, Clay?
He's just a really silly, kind of like a lot high energy person. So he's, he explains things really plain spoken, kind of like but maybe in a little bit of for the sense of humor. Cause so it makes it like, I don't know, funner to watch.
Huh. Oh, I've seen this guy. He's from the UK. He's got a British
Yeah.
accent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and his audience is still pretty small, so sometimes he'll still respond to you and stuff like that.
Ah. Okay. I'll subscribe. I have seen his stuff, but I think it was on Salesforce or it was on Notion or something. Maybe. Okay, I'll take a look at him.
Here's another resource on Reddit that Clay posted, the Winter 23 release notes abridged edition. So this is Reddit. So, I don't know
How
who.
reliable is this site? Has anybody had any experience with Reddit?
I just think something like this, I mean, he's not going to make stuff up probably, and he might get something wrong, but if it would give you a clue of something important, and then you could go research it and learn more, right? It's not going to be your be all and end all, but it's going to give you that kind of overview of, oh gosh, is there anything I really need to know about? For myself, when it comes to the 3 major releases of general Salesforce stuff, I try to go to a user group meeting where they're doing a review, and Salesforce releases an official deck, and somebody usually will try stuff out, hopefully real quick before the meeting, and then they'll walk through the deck and point to the major new features. Again, reading all 600 pages is, there are lots of people who do that. I haven't been one of them. And we kind of rely on those people to give us the summaries that point us to the features that we need to know about for our orgs. And then we can go do more research on those things.
Yeah.
And also those are for all the clouds. So if you just want to focus on the Sales Cloud and or the Service Cloud and or the Experience Cloud, or whichever ones you're supporting, then it's a smaller subset of the entire release notes. But I guess my point of this presentation is kind of burying your head in the sand and pretending that new stuff isn't coming out is not good for our customers or clients. It's not good for our careers. It's not even good for conversations. It's embarrassing when someone starts talking about something and you're like, what?
Yeah.
You want to be informed.
Well, I was introducing the whole gift entry template to my client, and I did not know that they took out the batch name out of it. And I mean, it sounds like the functionality is still the same, but I didn't know that they made those changes. So that was interesting to find out.
So here we see
Oh,
that batch
yeah.
gift entry still there. That's the legacy one that you can't make new ones, but you could see old ones.
Yeah.
Gift entry is the new one.
Okay.
And I will share if someone hasn't set this up yet, that this is a user interface that is not intuitive, in my opinion. Takes a long time to come up also. But when you're setting up the template, if you need to change which fields are in or out or in which section, and I guess we do that. Do we do that in the NPSP settings? I don't remember. That'll take a minute to come up too. this is not enabled in this org. So let's go here. Where is it?
I think it's under systems tools,
Thank you.
advanced mapping, data import, gift entry.
Here we go. So this is how easy it is to enable gift entry. Thank you, Ruby.
No problem.
And then where do we, here we can customize the automatic batch naming convention. But where do we, let's see what happens if I refresh this now.
You should be able to add a new template if you go to the,
Mhm.
yeah, create template. Mhm.
This is the part I wanted to show you. You see how there's this blue outline around this box? That's called a section. If you add another section, and now you want to add fields to it, you would go over here to the object of the fields you want to add, and you click on them, but little do you know that they're going to show up in the one that you have selected. So just make sure you select the section you want to add fields to before you start clicking things over here. And if you put it in the wrong section accidentally, you can't drag and drop it or anything between sections. So you have to remove it from the section, then go to the section you want to add it to, and then add it back in. I don't know if everybody followed that. I don't know why I'm not. Let's see if I put the first name. So first name just showed up here. And if that's not what I wanted, there's really nothing I can do except delete it out of this section of the template. And I don't know if I can add it to here. Yep, now it's added there. So it's just a kludgy little, once you know it, it's easy, but people have gotten stuck there and confused. So just thought I'd mention it. So setting up a template is more of an admin job, I think. I mean, I guess you could have a power user that could do this for themselves, but this, once the template is set up, for the end users, they should just be, picking hopefully an existing template that an admin set up for them. And then this is another warning that I'll give you is you give your let's see, what am I missing here? Batches. Okay, if I was doing a new batch, then I would select my template. And we only have the one choice. I say next. And this is where you set default values. This isn't where you start entering your records. Oh, sorry, this is where you give the batch a name, you tell it how many gifts you're going to enter and what the total should be, and that way it can check your math for you after you do all of your entry. So let me just.
You have to check that box at the bottom, don't you? Yeah.
Well, if you don't, then it'll let you process the batch even if your total doesn't match the total. So if you do want it to check for you, then you check that box.
Right.
This is the screen where 100 times I started entering a check right here. And this is not where you start entering a check. This is where you enter default values that will be the same for every donation you are then going to start entering in the batch after this screen. So just check this, it's clearly labeled, but who's looking up there? You just start entering your donation, but that's not what you want to do. Here you only enter default values. You can skip right over this one if you're not going to add any default values. And then now you're in the actual template and you can start adding your gifts. and they'll start being listed down here. They're not really getting processed into your database until the end when you upload the batch. And that's where this is using the same functionality as the NPSP data importer. It's in effect importing these records from gift entry into your database. All right.
That was a good review of the gift entry template.
I hope that was helpful. I'm happy to connect with any of you over LinkedIn. Keep me in mind as a resource and let me know what you're up to.
Dodie, I really appreciate the sort of hands-on, where we can kind of go into our own org and play around and see what you're talking about. I learned so much better that way. So thank you.
Yeah, me too. And it's
I'm
good
glad.
refresher, because this stuff is like you use it or lose it, right? And there's a lot of those things in NPSP settings that I know about, but I don't use them consistently. And so it's just nice to kind of go through it and review it again and just to get the cobwebs taken out of the brain a little bit. So yeah, thanks for doing that.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dodie.
Does anybody have
Sure.
any last parting comments, questions? Clear as mud.
I'm scheduled to do this again next month in England for Emma Keeling's group.
Oh,
So if you have any input for me about this presentation or things to add or take out or be clearer about or anything like that, I would welcome your feedback now or over LinkedIn or an email. My email is available on my LinkedIn profile, so just click under contact info and you can email me that way.
cool. I'm going to see if I can show up. It all depends that if it's like at 3:00 in the morning, I probably will not be there. But if it's, a doable time in Hawaii, then I'd love to show up. I've been dying to go to Emma's sessions, but her timing is totally off from mine. So fortunately. But thank you, Dodie, so much for coming and sharing your Saturday with us and all of your wisdom around NPSP. And thank you, everyone, for coming and sharing your Saturday with us. And next month, we're going to actually have Carolyn Renard, who is going to be with her partner from, I think they're with Data Geeks. So look for the presentation. There'll be some presentation links that I'll be posting in our, are all of you in the nonprofit Salesforce group by any chance? Let me make sure. Let me send you that link just in case. Okay, I'll post it in chat. If you haven't joined us, please do so, because that's where you'll see announcements. And you'll also see announcements on my LinkedIn page. And I can give you that as well. Where am I here? Go to my profile and put this in here. So in our LinkedIn nonprofit users group, you'll see recordings. If you didn't have a chance to go to some of the previous sessions, I'll post the recording. And that's also where you'll see posts of any upcoming events or anything new that's newsworthy. So please join us if you haven't had a chance to do so. And I hope to see you all next month when we have our presentation with Carolyn. Aloha, everyone.